Hello, and welcome back to Big Discussions. My name is Dr. Anwar Yusuf Dunbar. I am the creator and owner of this channel. Please like, share, and subscribe as I'm trying to grow it. I'm also the creator of the Big Words blog site, www.bigwordsourpowerful.com. All of my information is in the banner for my channel now, so you can go there and take a look. Today's date is February 3rd, 2019. It is Super Bowl Sunday for those of you who plan to watch. Right now there are a lot of folks boycotting the NFL and the Super Bowl. It's also the third day of Black History Month. Black History Month is, as you know, the second month of the year in February. And interestingly, it's always the shortest month of the year. But I think that, even though this month is dedicated to Black history, quote unquote, it's on us to continue to learn throughout the year. And it shouldn't just be restricted to one month, whether that's doing personal study or whatever. Looking back at my youth, there were typically, there are certain figures that we tend to think about when we think about Black History Month, and there are certain figures that are always associated with Black History Month. And one of my, I'm a STEM professional. I have a PhD in pharmacology with training, additional training in toxicology, and right now I'm a regulatory scientist. And I consider myself a STEM advocate, especially for Black people. So I wanted to use my time during Black History Month to discuss some of the notable science figures and inventors. I think that data has shown that less than 10% of STEM degree holders are Black. So that means we lag behind in these fields, and we tend to cluster more in the lower paying fields or the other fields, which is fine if that's where your interest lies. But there are reasons why I think we're last in these science fields, and I think that whatever we can do to reverse that tide, we should do it. I think one of the things that's happening is that there aren't enough images early on for Black STEM professionals or aspiring Black STEM professionals, and I think that it's very important to get these images out early. So the individual, part of that's history, and part of that's knowing that what we've done in these fields, and part of that is knowing that who the individuals are in these fields historically. So as you can see, I'm wearing a t-shirt of the periodic table of elements, which is from chemistry. And so the individual I want to focus on for this vlogcast is actually Dr. Percy Julian, who in my mind was not just a titan in terms of being a Black chemist, but he was a titan in just the chemistry world, which itself is very vast. So he was a very important individual, which I'm going to talk about shortly. But my mentor, the one I discussed in my first vlogcast, actually gave me this a couple years ago when I started this writing / mentoring journey. We never talked about why he gave this to me, but I think that maybe he sensed that I didn't understand the importance of my PhD. And when I watched this documentary, it did give me a new appreciation for my PhD and everything that I did to get this degree, and actually what the degree stands for and what it means. And I think that, well, one of the things I thought about when I watched this documentary was that, why didn't I see this earlier? How come no one showed this to me sooner? It would have been very, very valuable to see this before I started my doctoral studies, because much of what I experienced during my doctoral studies are what Dr. Julian experienced in his doctoral studies. So, you know, when you're a black student at a Big Ten university or at an Ivy League university or wherever it is you are trying to get your PhD, you know, sometimes you wonder if you belong there, and sometimes you wonder if you're doing good work. And a part of science, which is depicted in this documentary, is trying your experiments over and over and over again, seeing what doesn't work, seeing what does work, and then eventually working towards your answer. It can take long hours. It can take a lot of perseverance, and sometimes you're competing against scientists in other labs here in the United States and across the world as well. So it was a very, very valuable tool or program in that regard. So I wrote a blog post about Percy Julian, and you could actually order this DVD yourself. You can go on my blog and see that that post about him, where I get into a lot of detail about who he was and some of the things that he actually did. So I'm going to keep this at a high level and just tell you that Dr. Julian was a master of identifying, isolating, and in some instances synthesizing medicinal chemicals naturally found in plants. And in some instances he was able to create precursors on a large scale for human use. An example is that he figured out how to isolate something called compound S from soybean oil. And in doing so, he was able to make cortisone, which is a treatment for rheumatoid arthritis. He was able to make the cortisone more readily available for people who needed it, and he was also able to drive the cost down. So he was able to make it more affordable. You know, today, cortisone is not a big deal. You know, treating rheumatoid arthritis is pretty commonplace. But back then, 70 years ago in the 1930s and 1940s, these treatments weren't there. And so he was able to impact medicine, not as a physician working on the patients, but as a chemist figuring out how to scale up production of this medication and make it more readily available to the public. So in that regard, he was a real pioneer, a real titan, and he did all of this and other things while navigating academia and private industry, you know, while experiencing prejudice and racism. So he did a lot. What also stood out to me is that, as you know, as a brilliant man, he was always thinking about his science, and he was always thinking about the experiments that he was working on. So he was always thinking the science and always thinking about what to do next and how to improve his results and how to beat his competitors. So that stood out to me as well, and that's something that as a graduate student and as a postdoc, something that I kind of had to learn and embrace and embody. So, you know, I'm going to close by saying that it's important to hear these stories. It's important to see these images. You know, as black people in the United States, we see a lot of, you know, images of entertainers and athletes and politicians and these kinds of things. And, you know, what you see is what you aspire to be. So if you don't know any STEM professionals, or if there aren't any in your families, you know, you might not think that you can do something like that. And so it's important to get these images out there. I try to explain this, albeit briefly, at the Congressional Black Caucus annual legislative conference a couple of years ago during the QA session with a STEM panel. I don't think the moderator understood what I was trying to say, and I might not have explained it well enough under those circumstances. But getting these images out there is important. It's important for young people. One question I get quite a bit from parents, from black parents are, my son or my daughter has, they like science. What do I do with them? Well, part of it is getting them in contact with STEM professionals at STEM career fairs, and STEM demonstrations. Also encouraging them to do well in their coursework, but also getting images in front of them like this one. Images showing that we have a history of doing science and excelling at science, and in some instances in much harder conditions than those we face today. I did not know who Percy Julian was when I was growing up. I just had an interest in science on my own. And what's interesting is that my entire time at my HBCU, his name never came up. I don't remember at any point Percy Julian's name coming up in my chemistry courses or any other science courses there. And that's not knocking my HBCU, but I think many of us could have benefited from learning about someone like this earlier on in our process, because it might have propelled some of us through to the finish line. I think in my cohort, I think I might be the only one in my cohort who finished and stayed on the scientific track. And on that same vein, I'll just say that a buddy of mine over at Howard University, Dr. Vernon Morris, said that this is required viewing for all of their chemistry PhD students. So the images are important, knowing the history is important, and knowing that we have done these things and that we can do these things is very important as well. So with that, I'm going to conclude. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. All the links to my social media and my blog site are in the banner for this video. I'm sorry, are they on the banner for this page, for my page, for my channel. So with that, look out for the next one, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.